Hello 5317 and welcome to Module 2, Words Matter. Hopefully you've already successfully completed everything in the course basics and in the first module, and you're ready to engage highly with this material. If that is not the case, please wrap up anything from the first module as quickly as possible so that you're ready to focus your attention on this next topic. So a lot of what the readings discussed this week were the ways that you can try and increase student vocabulary, as well as building the case for why increasing student vocabulary is important. We're going to delve a little deeper into this in just a minute, but I wanted to go and highlight some of these big ideas so hopefully you're connecting them across the readings. Oral vocabulary is a significant predictor of reading comprehension, and it is difficult, if not impossible, to successfully read for meaning, not just to code, but understand what you're reading. It's very difficult to successfully read words you could not use in your everyday speech. If you don't feel confident using it to say out loud to someone, to express a meaning that you want to express, you're going to have a much harder time reading that word successfully. So how do we do that? Well, fully integrating new words into oral vocabulary has to be done in meaningful contexts. Decontextualizing words, having students just learn word lists and that sort of thing, it certainly has been done for a long time in educational settings, but there has been an equally long period of time where teachers and researchers and children have all been trying to explain that that doesn't really work. It will work for some students, but even for those students, it's not as high yield as teaching language in meaningful context. We learn words better when we are seeing them used in a meaningful way and then are given opportunities ourselves to use them in meaningful ways. That's just how we learn words. It's how we learned words at the very beginning of our lives, and it's the best way to learn words now. Looking in a dictionary, not an effective way, by the way. That's extremely decontextualized, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later in this presentation. But here's another fact that perhaps we dislike acknowledging. Truly learning new words does not happen in a single sitting. It does not happen in 3 sittings or 4 sittings, and some people will say 10 is a magic number. There's no magic number. It's an average. 10 meaningful experiences with a word, more than likely it'll have integrated its way into your vocabulary, but that's not a guarantee. The idea, though, is that building new vocabulary has to be reiterative. You have to come back to words again and again to help students practice them and then integrate them into the vocabulary they feel comfortable using. A couple of our readings talked about the language gap. So what is that? What is a language gap? So I have here a few facts that I'll go over, but mostly I just want you to understand the seriousness of the issue wherever you are at in the learning spectrum as far as progression goes, whether you are in an elementary school classroom and taking this despite that that's not your actual context at this moment, or if you're in a high school classroom, no matter the type of high school classroom. High knowledge 3rd graders have vocabularies equal to low performing 12th graders. That's the gap that we're trying to address here. The fact that some students in the 3rd grade already know the same number of words, possibly not the same level of complexity of words, but the same quantity of words, equal to low performing 12th graders. Those top high, so does that maintain? Yes, it does, because those top high school seniors, when compared to those really low performing 12th graders, they know 4 times the words of lower performing classmates. So if we say that a lower performing 12th grader can easily and flexibly use 25,000 words, then a high performing high schooler could use 100,000 easily and flexibly. That provides a lot of issues when it comes to reading, when it comes to access, when it comes to speaking and being understood, to being taken seriously as they leave the school environment and go into other contexts, higher education, the workforce, whatever that is. 1st grade students from high socioeconomic status, that's what SES is, socioeconomic status, they come into school with about twice as many words as their lower SES counterparts. So this is something that starts off from the word get that we don't have control over. The only thing we do have control over is how we then try and meet that need for students who are not given access to as many words as their peers for whatever reason. Because there are many reasons. Almost none of them, by the way, are because parents aren't talking to their kids or don't care that their kids don't know these words. That's never what it is. There's a whole plethora of reasons that I don't want to get into right here, though I'd be happy to at a later date. For now, let's just stick with the fact that this is the reality, and that students need to learn 4,000 to 5,000 words a year just to keep pace, to help them to start catching up. Sometimes they need support with even more words than that. Now, that's an impossible number of words to teach specifically. So instead, what we have to have are a good set of strategies to help students learn a certain number of high-value words, words that can really have a lot of bang for the buck, and then give them strategies of how to integrate new words into their vocabulary when they're doing their own independent reading and exploring of language. So let's look at that a little bit deeper. Reading words for meaning. How do students learn to read new words? And if your first thought went to that dreaded D, I said it before, I'll say it again. Please, please do not send students to a dictionary to learn a new word. It is one of the least effective methods for learning a new word. Dictionaries are great for clarifying meaning, for double checking your spelling, for trying to find the shades of meaning in a word to make sure that you're using it the way you want to. They're not good for trying to learn something new. Let's look at why. Word meanings are nuanced. Learning an unfamiliar word from a dictionary, last resort. It can take up to 430 different nuanced meanings to describe a single word. That is not hyperbole. That is the actual count. It is what set the world record, the Guinness Book of World Records, according to them, the world record for the number of meanings for an English word. That word is set. And it took over 60,000 words in the Oxford English Dictionary just to explain the different meanings of the word set. From a drum set, to a volleyball set, to the Egyptian god set, to the meaning that set has in the phrase ready, set, go. And this is a word that most of us would feel very comfortable and confident using, but if we tried to recreate the dictionary definition set, we would struggle. I would certainly struggle. Perhaps you would feel confident writing that 60,000 words worth of meanings, but I know that I would not. I couldn't tell you all the 430 ways we could use this word. So when I encounter a new word that's much more complicated than the word set, that has extremely nuanced meaning, I don't want to do it for the first time in a decontextualized setting like a dictionary. Let's go in a deeper example. Dictionary definitions are literal and decontextualized. By decontextualized, I mean all they tell you is the meaning of the word without giving you any insight into what it will mean in the context you're trying to use it. And because words can have multiple meanings, that lack of context can be crippling when you're trying to make sense of a text. So here's my example. The man's behavior was irremissible. Majority of students will not know what the word irremissible is. And if their only strategy for figuring out an unfamiliar word is to go to a dictionary, they're going to see this. Irremissible, not remissible, not helpful. I do not know what this means any better than I know what irremissible means, so I have to look up remissible. And remissible is capable of being forgiven. Now, for your higher performing students, this will probably be enough. They'll probably be able to have drilled down into these layers of meaning and looked at the man's behavior was not capable of being forgiven. So for this moment, they're going to be able to make sense of this sentence. Now, it is unlikely that this word will become part of their vocabulary. Unlikely that 3 weeks from now, if they encountered this word again, that they would automatically remember what it is. Very unlikely. However, this could have supported them enough to get them through this sentence this time for your higher performing students. Many students, however, especially when we look at the middle grades, wouldn't really be sure what capable of being forgiven could mean. Capable is a word that could easily trip them up. So we start looking at the definitions for capable. Susceptible, having attributes required for performance or accomplishment, having traits conducive to or features permitting something, having legal right to own, enjoy, or perform, having or showing general efficiency and ability. Now students are faced with choices. They have to read through all of these definitions. Then they have to figure out which of these definitions makes the most sense with what I'm reading. But the key here is that they don't know what the word means. So how can they choose a meaning when they don't know what the word means? They can get a general idea, and they'll get a general idea from this, probably. But it's difficult to then back it up because you have to insert these. So susceptible. Good chance that many of the students who don't know the word capable will not know the word susceptible. Probably they'll ignore that one. Having attributes required for performance or accomplishment. So try and stick that back in. So it would be not remissible, not capable of being forgiven, not having attributes required for performance or accomplishment of being forgiven. Do you see how it's really difficult to make sense of that? Especially if at any point along the way, a word like susceptible, conducive, efficiency, if any of those words are trip-ups for the students as well, then they have to keep drilling down and down and down into words they don't understand. Writing the dictionary definition of a word does not mean you understand the word. It doesn't. Because you have to deeply understand how it's being used before you truly understand it. So what do we focus on? As you saw in some of your readings, we focus on the different tiers and make our decisions about what to include based on where we feel a word fits. Is it an everyday word, something students are familiar with and is probably already in their verbal vocabulary? If so, don't teach it. At the higher levels we're at, you do not need to be teaching students the word house or dog or good or any of those words unless you are in a setting where the reading level is at a level that would make those words appropriate and more difficult for students. There are certainly certain exceptional children situations where that's going to be the case, where you're going to have to be directing your instruction differently, but we're talking about in the general education classroom here and in the general content area classrooms here. And then there's these high use academic words. They're used across different content areas, although they occasionally have specialized meanings within content. So sometimes the way they're used in chemistry will differ for how they're used in mathematics or in English literature, that sort of thing. Things like approach, direction, prediction. They're broadly used. And then you have these tier 3, content area specific, low frequency, things like allegory, hypotenuse, mitosis, a cappella, words that you're only going to see come up in your content texts. Students need focus on tier 2, high focus on tier 2 words across disciplines. And then in the discipline, they need to see those tier 3 words being explained in meaningful contextualized ways, not being sent to a dictionary. So ignore those tier 1s. They don't need support with those. Give a lot of attention to recognizing these tier 2 words. What is a word that would be sort of bang for the buck? Something that if you spend a little time on, it's going to help that student throughout their entire day. And then, of course, helping them understand those content area specific words. They won't be used a lot, but they still need to understand them for the work they're doing in your classroom. Okay, so what should you be doing next? Read through chapter 3. That's our main course text. And then you're going to have another chapter by the same authors from a book called Word Wise and Content Rich. Read through those. Look at the examples and other resources. Participate in the case studies discussion board. Work on your vocabulary project. And then take the quiz. That is my suggested progression through the information in the modules. It's also how the modules are organized, so just follow through them. As I stated in the last module, I would not advise that you wait to read the expectations for the assignments until after you've finished all of your reading. So go and take a quick look at the expectations so that as you read, you're ready for what you're going to need to refer back to in those texts. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. If you already know what kind of questions you're going to have to answer through the vocabulary project, through the discussion board, where I'm asking you to refer back to these texts. If you already know what you're going to need to be talking about, it will help focus your reading so that you can read and understand, this could apply to the discussion board or this could apply to the vocabulary project, if that makes sense. And then the quiz, of course, is just over the whole reading in general. So the discussion board, in this case, the initial post is due May 26. Remember, there are 2 different dates. The initial post is due, where you respond to the prompt, and you won't be able to see anyone's responses until you respond. And then after that, there is a due date for all responses. But the goal here is to have a conversation that occurs throughout the week. If you wait till the very end of the week and do not respond over multiple days, you have not engaged in the discussion at a high level. You have not done exceptional work in the discussion, just so you're aware. For this week, you're going to select one case study and respond to the prompt using your background knowledge as a student, as a reader, and as a teacher. And then you can integrate specific evidence from the course readings as you respond to help support your ideas or to give sort of a nuance to your ideas and to help the people who are reading your post connect your understandings. When you do refer to those course texts, remember to cite the course materials, both in the initial post and in the responses. High value responses are not, I agree with you, that's great, way to go, interesting point. You can start there, but it can't end there. You should be reflecting on what's been said by your classmates, bringing the course materials in, bringing your experiences in, and integrating all of that when you reply. 2 to 3 word replies are not going to be considered at a high level. They're not going to hit those minimums that are required to be seen as successful in this assignment. For your primary assignment this time, I want you to remember that when you're doing your vocabulary project, reading, SPED, elementary, these are not content areas. So content areas are things like chemistry, history, physical education, music. All of those are content areas. Elementary is not a content area. And even music and science and all of those things, those are content areas, but you still need to be focused on grades 6 through 12. We are not discussing the literacy of the elementary student in this class. You have to stay focused on those upper grades, 6th grade to 12th grade. If that's not your current context, pick a grade, pick a content area, and just stick with it. You're more than welcome to change it up, but as far as making it a little easier on yourself and diving deeper into a topic, feel free to just pick a grade level in the appropriate range, a content area, and go from there. You can choose from a lot of different formats, but the key thing here is that I should be able to access it without signing into anything, and you should not have to pay for it. If you're hitting paywalls, turn around and go do something else, figure something else out. And as with all project assignments, you should be referring to our course materials, including the citations to let me know where your ideas are coming from. That is sort of the basics of all this. Okay, well, it is been a great week so far. I am really looking forward to diving into the assignments from Module 1 as soon as I finish this recording. That's what I'm going to do. I hope you guys have a great week and a great long weekend, and I will see you in the next module.